My name is Paul Jordan. I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1936. I was the youngest of four children, born to a German mother and an Irish father. My mom died when I was 3 of leukemia. My dad moved us 4 kids to live with him and his 2 old maid sisters, Gertrude and Hortense. Those are names from the past. And so us kids were raised in Detroit, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit called Highland Park. Went to a Catholic high school, graduated in 1954. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and my dad sure couldn't afford to send us kids further on into school. So in those days, we all spent our time in the service, which I strongly would urge that to happen in the future in this country. So I volunteered for the draft, went into service with several of my buddies. After we had a little beer party the night before, we volunteered the next day.
Oh.
So
How old were you?
I was, at the time I volunteered, I was 17. When I went into service, I was 18. I took basic training in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And then I was sent to Fort Gordon, Georgia for 6 months of training to become a high-speed radio operator. If you achieve that level, you're then promoted from private to private first class. That's when I got my first promotion. Then I was sent to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Spent a very short period of time there, 2 or 3. Got my orders to go over to Baumholder, Germany, to join up with my unit that became the 265th Field Artillery Battalion. Big, real large, guns going out into the field. And my job was to radio back to the troops, any information that the company commander deemed feasible. I had a great experience. It was a wonderful opportunity. It made me grow up real fast. I learned how to save $68 a month because that's all I got paid at the time, I believe. And I took a $25 war bond out of that as well. So I learned how to be pretty frugal in my beginning. So it was a wonderful experience to see Germany, which I saw quite a bit of on my leave. And I got over to England to see London and visit some of my other buddies who were stationed in that part of the world. And I was fortunate enough that the Korean War had subsided by the time I got into the service, and shortly after I was discharged, came to an end legally, I guess. They signed off and said, this conflict is over. So I was very fortunate in that regard, and I feel very blessed that my 2 sons didn't have to go into any other kind of a conflict during their lifetime.
Well, let me ask you, were you doing most of your work from Germany? Or were you able to go into Korea?
Oh, no, I didn't step a foot into Korea. Mm-hmm. I was only in during that time frame. Uh-huh. My training was in the largest army base in Europe, which was Baumholder, Germany. And obviously, if they needed the type of guns that my unit, was used, that's when we would have been sent to Korea. But thank goodness that call never came. But no, I was just, we were active every day of the week that we were there. I had kind of a unique position in the battalion because I was in the headquarter battalion that was in charge of the communication between all the units. So I worked like 4 hours on and 12 hours off, and then 4 hours on, 12 hours off. The rest of the time I was, doing guard duty or some other, scrubbing floors or cleaning latrines or whatever else they made you do to make sure they kept you sharp.
Right. Did you collaborate at all with the Germans? Were they involved?
They weren't involved. No, we did stay in barracks that used to house the German army. They're beautiful compared to what I stayed in the United States, quite honestly. They're beautiful buildings, like 3-4 stories, and we had a separate room. 4 of us shared a room. But the German people at that time, I think, still had, a lot of them had a lot of animosity toward the occupiers, if you will. I mean, when we'd go out on bivouac, which was out into the field for training and that kind of thing, we'd wander off at our downtime to go into a pub to have a beer or something, and sometimes we ran into situations, never any fistfights or anything like that, but where we felt we weren't received real well. But I don't blame them, it was their country, and here we were occupying, but they deserved it based on their leader that they chose to put into office.
So how many troops do you think were in Germany at that time?
Oh, gee. I'd be guessing, Patricia, but maybe 50,000. And in this, because this was the largest, this base, Baumholder, Germany, again, I'm guessing maybe half of that, 25,000 maybe.
That's a large force. So you came back, and what did you do after that?
Well, my roommate, my wife of 61 years that is sitting over in the house there, was still chasing me around the country. We weren't married yet, and so as soon as I came home, she was there to meet me. She was only 17 at the time. I was 20, and her parents had moved to California, so she insisted that I follow her to California. I'm being facetious, obviously. She's a sweetheart, and I knew right away she was the gal I wanted to marry, and I did. And like I said, we've been married 61 years.
And where did you both live?
In California?
Yes.
We lived in La Crescenta, California. You familiar? It's
No.
a suburb of Glendale, California,
Yes.
north of Los Angeles. We raised, actually 2 of our kids were born in Michigan. It's a long story. We were married in California, and then after my marriage, we moved back to Michigan for 2 years, and we had our first 2 children back there. And her family were still in California, so we chose to come back and be with them. And our last 2 were born in California.
So you had 4 children? Mm-hmm. All boys?
Two boys and 2 girls.
Okay. And none of them have joined the military?
No.
Okay.
No, I told them lots of stories about it, though. So I told all my grandkids, too, so they can tell them to you just as well as I can.
What sort of stories?
Oh, maybe not that you'd want to put down.
Oh, first, I
it's just they can't understand. I mean, kids nowadays, I mean, they've got everything. When you'd walk into the restroom and there was just a line of 30 stools, everybody's sitting there reading the paper and stuff. It's kind of funny when you look back on that and say, "You're kidding, Grandpa. What are you talking about? You mean there wasn't any barriers that you?" I said, "No, we just, hi Fred, hi Joe, hi Pete," and you're sitting there, relieving yourself.
Yes.
Those kind of stories.